Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we return to talking about the children's television cartoon show called Arthur. Arthur is a long-running show that's been airing on PBS ever since I was a kid myself. So we're talking about decades-long show here that's been on TV for generations. And if you didn't know, Arthur is this kind of nice cartoon show aimed at kids. It's kind of one of those things that teaches them lessons. It teaches things about the world. It's kind of informational, but also funny and entertaining and cute. And, something you leave on if you have little kids. And PBS is the public broadcasting service here in America. They offer a lot of children's entertainment like this, especially stuff that's possibly informative, possibly educational. Another similar children's show would be something like Sesame Street. Sesame Street has a similar kind of vibe to it, but that's a live action thing with puppets. We're talking about with Arthur as a cartoon. And the reason we're talking about it is, again, Arthur seems to be getting woke. Arthur has been known to do this from time to time. We talked about them before a few years back when they forced in a gay wedding in one of their episodes. Yeah, they were trying to push this kind of left-wing propaganda. This pro-alphabet stuff is one of their angles. And I know I got a little backlash for covering that before, as did a lot of other people who kind of stood on the side of the state. There was a state, I believe it was Alabama, that actually banned Arthur because of this propaganda. And people were kind of debating whether or not that was cool. I wasn't necessarily on the side of censorship, but I was kind of rooting the state on, saying, hey, if you guys want to push back against this kind of stuff being pushed onto your kids, I understand that. I can understand that angle. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. I mean, it's not nearly as bad, but, the gay wedding thing wasn't a big deal either. It was just a funny kind of thing to force into a children's show. And that's what's also happening today. In today's episode, we're talking about a new clip from Arthur, which has been going around the internet. They talk about racism. And at this time in this era, we're obviously seeing them talk about it during this kind of racial tension in America. So Arthur's trying to kind of cash in, trying to get some more attention. So we're going to talk about that soon. We're going to go over the clip, go for some reactions and all that fun stuff. But first, let's take a moment to check out our sponsor. Do you think you're ready for whatever the future brings? Every day, the news headlines do get worse. There's civil unrest out there. There's a second wave of this terrible virus. There's been an economic collapse and massive suffering too. Not to mention what Mother Nature could do as well. Hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, wildfires, they're all out there and they're all problems we need to worry about in order to protect us, our families, and our friends. So the question I now ask is, are you guys prepared? Do you have enough food and do you have long-term storage food in case of an emergency? If not, I highly suggest you check out our link, preparewithnobs.com, because we're offering you guys some of the greatest long-term storage food that money can buy, and you also can save up to $100 if you order today. Here's an example of some of the great food they have to offer. As you can see, it comes in these hefty containers that you can store in your garage, in your pantry, in your closet, and it'll last a really long time too. So make sure you don't pass this up, because these offers won't last long. Supplies are going quick, so make sure you stock up at Prepare with NoBS today. Thanks for your time. I hope you guys enjoy this new product. And now back to the show. Great. Now that that's out of the way, let's get to the new Arthur clip. This is a clip that was shared by Josh. He says, I am racist now. That's obviously ironic response. And basically they're talking about racism in this Arthur episode, and they're talking about it through a lot of different angles. First of all, they do it in this kind of like video conference style, like he's video conferencing his friend. And that's, common. People do video chats all the time, but you got to realize the implication in this day and age. A lot of people are social distancing because of the virus. So there's this whole angle where people are video conferencing more using things like Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, all kinds of video conferencing apps. Facebook has a messenger that does video calls now. And everyone's using this in this day and age because they're trying to avoid the virus. And I think that adds a level of kind of like a fear over it. It makes it kind of like almost eerie when you see everyone video conferencing. This is something we went over in another video. Oprah did a show where she had a new talk show and everyone video conferenced in, and they did it in like the most creepy way possible. Like Oprah's sitting in this white room and she's watching these video screens that are all vertical video, and it looked really creepy. It looked like a scene from The Matrix. And I wouldn't say that Arthur has gone this far, but they're definitely using the video conference angle, and then they're also in turn addressing racism. So it is pretty relevant. You got to give them credit for kind of addressing current events, but I think they're kind of capitalizing on it a little bit and also just going the wrong way, going too far left and possibly bringing up stuff that kids don't necessarily need to worry about. Like racism shouldn't be like a big issue. Like, yeah, we should say to kids, don't be racist, like respect everyone, treat everyone equally, like give them a kind of platitude like that. But the way they get into depth here is a little much, I think. So with that said, let's go ahead and check it out. Hopefully I don't get copyright striked, but we'll try watching it anyway.
Did you see that video?
Yeah, I just watched it. It was awful. I can't believe someone would be hurt like that just because they're black.
Racism is so unfair. No one should ever judge someone by the color of their skin.
Yeah, that's obvious, but the problem here is, okay, there's already a few issues. First of all, they're trying to bring up some situation. I don't know if there was clips or something before this, but it seems a little strange to me because we're talking about an aardvark and a rabbit character. That's Arthur, that's his friend Buster. They're animal characters, but they're still talking about racism as if it's real, like as if people are black and white in their world, which is just really strange to me. Like it's kind of like a contradiction. I know it's something you have to deal with in these kinds of situations, but it's just weird. It's like they forced in the black thing. And then the other thing that Arthur said that doesn't actually mesh well, he says, we need to treat everyone equal. And I believe in that. That's what I kind of said before when I was talking about platitudes you might teach children. But there's actually a big problem with this. Like the liberals and this kind of ideology they're professing here, they don't want to treat everyone equal. That's not what they're about at all, actually. They're about giving preferential treatment to minorities and also treating white people, straight people, other people they don't like conservatives. They treat them lesser. They put them on a lesser rung of the ladder, and they're actually having a hierarchy. So the fact that they're pushing this ideology that's actually race obsessed and making it like the most important thing is rather ironic, since Arthur is trying to push this treat everyone equal message that doesn't actually align with the rest of their ideology.
Buster, it happens everywhere. I was talking to Mrs. McGrady the other day. She said there's a really long history of black people not being treated fairly in this country.
It has to stop.
Yeah, really righteous and really like just preachy and over the top. And then the other thing I want to note here is, like, again, I'm getting a little issue here with the kind of the world that they're in and the world that they're talking about, and where is this kind of being addressed. I mean, I know this show airs mostly in North America. It actually airs like all over the place. But the thing worth noting is this is actually a show that's produced in Canada. This is a Canadian cartoon. They're Canadian writers. They're all left wing. This comes from a Canadian place. Like, now that you say it, you can kind of tell it's got that kind of like dopey, hokey kind of Canadian vibe. But they don't really address that. That's what I find weird. They're saying racism's everywhere. And to me, it really seems like they're addressing America. They're like saying a lot of our racism is in America. But I would rather just delegate them. Like, if you think there's a lot of racism, that's where you are. I don't think racism is everywhere in my country. I've been living here for over 30 years. I've been all across the country to many of our great states. And there is not racism everywhere. It doesn't happen everywhere. It's not as big an issue, nearly as big an issue as they claim. So I think indirectly that Arthur is actually admitting that Canada is very racist everywhere. There's a lot of racist in Canada, and racism happens all the time. And if they want to stop that, like, by all means, I'll help you. I'll support that. I don't want racism anywhere. I think that's a bad thing. But I don't think that Arthur and their Canadian creators really realize what they're admitting here. They're admitting there's a lot of racism in Canada, but they're trying to act like it's the same in America. They're trying to act like it's everywhere in the world, but it's just not true. And I think it just shows that they're ignorant and they're like just apt to believe what they see on TV. Like, Canadians, they don't really get out much. They're all stuck in their little border country that just lies right on the edge of America. And it actually kind of affects them. Sometimes they think they're Americans. They think they're part of the United States, but I'm not saying they can't be. I'm not saying they're totally far off. Obviously, there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of big differences. We all know that Canada is like very, very left-wing, very beta, very socialist. They've got their leader, Trudeau, the French Canadian drama teacher who's just totally like bows down to all the minorities and wears a turban and all that silly stuff. He does biracial makeup as well. Like, their place is a mess. And I think that the fact that they want to impose this onto America and say there's racism everywhere, I think that's rather rude, and I deny it. And I'm saying that it's actually coming from Canada.
But
what can we do? I mean, I'm 8. I can't even fry an egg on my own.
I don't know. Maybe Mrs. McGrady can give us some ideas.
Yeah, well, I think this is actually really funny because they're admitting that kids can't really do anything about this, and they're going to talk to their teacher here soon. I'm not sure if we even need to go much further. But the other thing I want to note is the way he says fry an egg. I mean, that's something that we might say in America, like especially in northern states. Like I said, north part of America is very similar to the Canada, which is Canada is a big country, but they all live on the southern border. You got to remember, none of them are up in this cold, big areas of their country. It's actually just all along the southern border. But regardless, the way he says fry an egg, he says it like fry an egg, and then like it's very Canadian, and it's also just showing the other thing, like about the kids again, like these kids can't do anything about it. Like they can't really help. Like it's nothing against them. They're just young. They're learning. They're trying to figure out other stuff. Like they should be focused on other stuff. Like kids need to learn math, science, like talk about like learning to make friends and play some sports. You know, they need to learn basic stuff before they address these complex problems like racism in Canada. Like I understand, I get it. They're saying there's a lot of racism in Canada and racism's everywhere, but the kids can't do anything about it. So that's why I say, why even involve them? Like give them like the basics, like maybe say something about racism, like simple, like don't be racist. But beyond that, I think it's just too much. I think it's just like showing they're trying to indoctrinate these kids and get them onto the left side early on, which is something like I don't doubt happens in Canada. That's how a country gets so left wing. And I'm not trying to go on a big anti-Canadian thing here, but it does make me defensive when you see this kind of cartoon, this kind of thing coming from another foreign country trying to say you're racist when really it's more about them. So yeah, that about wraps things up. That's the Arthur video. They're talking about racism. They're indoctrinating children. They're trying to portray their racism onto another country, onto other parts of the world. I say it's just maybe a Canadian thing. If they think there's a lot of racism around them, that's in their area. It's not in our area. I don't know where they get the idea that they know a lot about America, but this is typical Canadian behavior. They're very nosy neighbors. They're not like the kind of neighbor that just leaves you alone and minds their own business. Like Canada is a neighbor who like acts like they have a right to your property. It's like the neighbor that kind of like comes and visit your house all the time without being invited. They're like sticking their head over the fence, like looking out like, oh, what are you guys doing? What's going on over there? Are you sure you're following the rules? Hey, make sure you stop your racism. Hey, I see you got a lot of racism over there. Hey. And yeah, that's the kind of neighbor Canada is. Actually, now that I think of it, I almost would respect a neighbor like Mexico better. Like, yeah, they're always trying to sneak in, but at least they're not like judging us. They're not like trying to be like, oh, you're all racist, you're all terrible, you're all bad. Like they're trying to act like they're better than us. Like Canada is like the snooty neighbor. Mexico is like the poor neighbor who wants to sneak in. That about wraps things up. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Tell me what you think about Arthur, their new propaganda, and everything else about today's video. Also hit that like button if you enjoyed what you saw today, if you had a laugh. And until next time, have a great day.